Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. There's a new book out. It's entitled What Women Really Want. It's a book by three women. You know, if a guy wrote a book like this, no woman would pay attention to it. And rightfully so. I don't know if you figured it out. I'm old. And I'm going to tell you something right now. Men don't know women. They might know their women. They may know something about, but I've been married 55 years to the same woman. I get surprised. You know, it's like that. So three women write this book. They wrote it about 3 years ago. We're just catching up. And they wrote that conservative women want real men. And they want these real men to be a part of their lives. They don't want some guy who has been reduced to a useless yes man, reduced by the domination of a federal government that wants to control men and save women with birth control systems and programs. Dr. Loudon said real women really long for a number of characteristics in men. Characteristics like men who advance their economic prosperity, not living in the basement in mom's house until they're 35, not marrying a woman and expecting her to go to work and take care of stuff so he can have this little silly job that he loves that doesn't cost him anything. They want men who aren't afraid to stand up for what's right. Women's lib movement's not going to look, I don't know how these women get away with saying stuff like this out loud, but you know, we've all been told as men, you know, sit down, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. They want men who aren't afraid to let them, the women, think for themselves and exercise liberty by choosing their own path. Did I tell you I've been married for 55 years? I have never imposed my will on my wife in my life. My wife thinks for herself, and I like it that way. The whole idea is that you come together around commonalities. You come together around the things that are important to the two of you, and over time you begin to think alike. Not one person tells them what to do and the other, okay, honey. I don't understand this. They want men who will do their own jobs and provide for their families. Men who will listen. Do you listen to your wife? Well, she just wants to talk about babies and fingernails and hairstyles and fashions and, you know, Oprah. I don't know. No. Listen, they're telling you stuff. Even in the midst of stuff that sounds silly to you, it's important stuff. And if it doesn't do anything else, it gives you an insight into who they are. But these women are saying that women don't want to be enslaved. They don't want to be placated, patronized, and they don't want to be labeled. They don't want to be victims of government intrusion. Isn't that amazing? In the world I grew up in, this is what men were. There were exceptions, always are, but the men in my life were not the caricatured type. What happened to our society between 1950 and 1990? Well, I'm sorry to tell you, women's lib happened. It happened when we got birth control pills. When the liberal media, the liberal educational system, and the psychological community banded together to craft this new normal. I ran into a lady, would have been in 1989, 91, too. We're in that time period. And she was working a full-time job in an office. And she told me with tears welling up in her eyes how that she longed to give up her job and just stay home with her children. And I said, your husband won't let you do that? He said, no, it's not that. And she hemmed and she hawed. It was the other women. And she felt this peer pressure from the sisterhood. Well, all of that worked. It empowered women. But it only worked for a while. It only worked until it became obvious that women were actually being exploited through all of this. They're now forced to go to work when they have a baby and really want to stay home. Who did that? Other women did that. Women with a vested interest in keeping the newfound freedom they had won at very hard, what was that? A hard-won battle. Well, where did that lead? Well, it led us to no-fault divorce. People don't need a reason. They just stand up and say, I don't want to be married to this pig anymore. It led to abortion on demand. Eventually up to and including after the child was delivered. Now, any sane person looking at all of this from the outside would have to say, that's crazy. You are destroying the very fabric of the family, and the family is the very heart and soul of society. But the experts, the educators, the legislators, the counselors, even some of the preachers, went along and in many cases encouraged all of this and more. And so where do we end up? It's 2017. What are we complaining about now? We're complaining that men refuse to take responsibility. We're complaining that men won't get a job. We're complaining that these men aren't necessarily willing to marry. And there are women who really want to be married and they don't see the need for that. They're just shacking up, just living together. Isn't that okay? What's the problem? No, woman wants the security for her and for her family. She wants to know something that she can count on. And the men are saying, what's your problem? And I think the subtext is, how's all that women's lib thing working out for you? If you're paying attention, today there's a debate forming over what we've done to our men, and it ain't pretty. There's no telling what the future's going to bring when the spiritual, social, moral systems get so messed up and the foundations become so vague that very few can remember what it used to be. Now consider what a group of evangelicals did this week. We'll talk about that later in the next episode. Stay tuned.